So step 1 tells you to figure out what A, B, and C are. And then step 2 says substitute them into the formula. And then step 3 is where you have to work it out, and that's kind of the tricky part. Okay? So let's look at this first equation up there. 3x squared plus 5x plus 1 equals 0. That means we're trying to find out where it crosses the x-axis. Okay? So first thing we need to do is identify A, B, and C. C is the number in front of x squared. A is the number in front of x squared. I think I said C. I don't know. A is 3. B is the number in front of the x. And C is the number that's all by itself. Okay? So, I start off with the formula. The formula says negative B. So, whatever B is, you change the sign. If B is positive, it becomes negative that. If B is negative, it becomes positive that. So, negative B means change the sign of B. So, negative B would be 5. Plus or minus the square root. B squared. When I put B squared in the equation, I don't worry about the negative.
The opposite, wouldn't it be negative 5?
Yes. When I put B squared into the equation, I don't ever worry about the negative or the positive, because when I square it, it will be positive. So I usually just put the positive, that way I don't have to think about it. So B squared is 5 squared minus 4, because 4 is in the formula, AC. So A is 3, C is 1. Over 2A, so over means divide. 2A is 2 times 3. Okay, so figure out A, B, and C, write it in the formula. The next thing you should do is the part underneath the square root, put that in the calculator and see what you get. Don't put the square root in the calculator. Okay? So in the calculator, you're going to put 5 squared minus 4 times 3 times 1. So you get 13, and then divide by, and go ahead and multiply out the bottom. 2 times 3, 6. That's the answer.
You don't simplify that.
Sometimes you're going to simplify from there. Okay? The square root of 13, you can't break 13 down. There's nothing that you can divide 13 by. It's prime already. So you leave it. But if that were square root of 25, then there's more you have to do. If it was square root of 72, there's more you have to do. So it depends on what you get underneath that square root if you have to work it out further. Okay? That's as far as you go on this one. Questions about that? Alright, so A is 1, B is negative 6, and C is 2. Any questions about that? Alright, so let's put it in the formula. So it'd be negative B. B's already negative, so make it positive. So 6 plus or minus square root of B squared. I just don't put the negative because it's confusing when you put it in the calculator if you don't remember your parentheses. Minus 4AC over 2A. Alright, so then I'm going to put this in the calculator. 6 squared minus 4 times 1 times 2. You get 28. Okay, so we're not done on this one. And the reason is because 28 is not a prime number. Okay? There's more for me to do with the 28. Okay? So out to the side, I'm going to kind of do it maybe up here. I'm going to divide 28. And see what I get. So I'm going to divide by 2. You get 14. Divide that by 2, you get 7. So what does that give me? Okay, so I'm going to rewrite this as 6 plus or minus 2 square root 7 over 2. And then there's one more step. Once you rewrite it, if you can, then you have to look and see if there's anything in common. Well, you see how the numbers, you don't ever do anything with the square root, but look at the numbers. They all have a 2 in common. So you divide them all by 2. Okay? I'm going to write it under here in purple. 3 plus or minus 2 divided by 2 is 1. You can put a 1 there if you want. And then divided by 1. But I'm not going to put the divided by just because I'm running out of room. And so the final answer is this right here. Okay, so let's look at the third one. The third one's a little bit different. Can you tell me what's different about it? You see how the negative 9 is over on the right? The three numbers, or the three things, all have to be on the same side. So what I have to do first is bring that 9 over, so I have to add 9 on both sides. And once I bring it over, now it's the right kind of problem. It has to say equals 0 in order for you to solve it this way. Okay? So I know that A is 1, B is negative 8, and C is 9. Okay, I'm seeing lots of correct answers that are 8 plus or minus square root of 28 over 2. And then you have to break down the 28, which we did previously. And then I can divide these three things by 2. That'll leave the 7. So it would be 4 plus or minus 1 if you want to write it, square root of 7, over 1 if you want to, or just like that. So when you start this problem, you end up with that A, B, and C. There's the formula. When you work out the part underneath the square root, you get a 0 right there. Well, 0, 0. Just make it go away. All you have left is 34 divided by 2. What's 34 divided by 2? 17. That's the answer. It's positive 17 because the B is negative, so you had to change it. Alright, let's do this one. X squared plus 6x equals 16. What's the very first step I need to do there? So I need to get minus 16 and then leave it like that. Okay? So A is 1, B is 6, C is negative 16. Okay, so we get 100. I know what 100 is, right? I know that this is negative 6 plus or minus 10 over 2. Okay, so on this kind of problem, when the square root goes away, see up here, the square root went away because it was 0. And I could totally just forget about it. But here, when the square root goes away but there's still a number, on this kind of problem you have to write it out twice and find out 2 different answers. This is when you have 2 real solutions, okay? And what you do is you write this with a plus and then you write this with a minus. Okay? So you write negative 6 plus 10 over 2 and then you write negative 6 minus 10 over 2. You need to be very, very careful if you put this in the calculator. You either need to put negative 6 plus 10, press enter, and then divide by 2. Or make the fraction button and then put it. But don't just put it all in one step because it will be wrong if you do that. Okay? This answer gives you 2, and this answer gives you negative 4. Yeah, that should be a negative 8. I just divided twice instead. Alright, we're going to do the first one here. What do I need to do first on it? Minus the 6x. I need all of that to be on the same side, so x squared. And the 6x always goes in the middle, so I'm going to put it in the middle when I minus it over. And then plus 13. Alright, so that I know that A is 1, B is negative 6, that should be negative, and C is 13. Alright, I think you know how to do the first step, but we'll go ahead and do it anyway. Negative B plus or minus square root B squared minus 4AC over 2A. Go ahead and put that in the calculator. And I do believe you get a negative here. So that's just where we're going to use some I's. Okay? Okay, so it looks like we're getting negative 16 that goes there. Okay? So then, okay, I know the square root of 16. If I didn't, I'd have to break it down. But I know what it is. It's 4. But what did I do with that negative? Put an I with it. Now, because there's an I there, you do not have to break it down to two problems because you can't do anything with that I. But you can still divide the 6, the 4, and the 2 all by 2. Okay? So you get 3 plus or minus 2I over 1 if you want to write it, or you can leave it that way.